Wrapping up hour number one here on Hurrdat Sports Radio. I'm Ravi, Lulla. Andrew Rogers here with me. What up? We're on AM 590 ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities, as well as Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. Make sure you hop in the YouTube comments and start chatting with us over there. Or you can give us a call on the Warhorse Sportsbook hotline, 888-638-4876. That's where we'll talk to all of our guests today, including Cynthia Freeland coming up at 8 o'clock from the NFL Network. But I was thinking about, we were talking about NFL earlier. This is the final week of the regular season coming up. We watched the college football playoff on Monday. It means there's only one college football game left this year at the FBS level. At least that matters. I don't know. They used to sprinkle like random bowl games in. Are there those this year? I didn't even look.
In terms of this week?
Yeah, just like the.
I'm thinking no.
Okay, because they used to sprinkle random bowl games.
I don't know when that stopped, but
I'm gonna look real quick just to make sure.
It's definitely not this year.
Yeah,
because remember in the bowl schedule, it was New Year's 6 bowl games, and then it was just the college football semifinal, and then the championship.
They must have stopped that a couple years ago. Maybe they stopped it when they started doing
when they transitioned from BCS to playoff.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. I don't know where the time goes. I'm getting very old.
Well, you know what? The time goes fast, and football season just is over in the blink of an eye.
And that's where I wanted to go, because I start. You know how some people get the Sunday Scaries, where have you ever heard of that?
Is that like, hey, I'm going back to work?
Yeah. So
yes.
Mid Sunday afternoon, people start getting a little down. They start getting a little depressed because they're like, oh man, my weekend's over. I got to head back to work on Monday. Not us, because we have a fun job, but
and I start work Sunday night.
I was gonna say, yeah, and we're sort of like always working because we have to watch games and stuff. But so I'm kind of starting to get my football version of the Sunday Scaries a little bit here, because we're at a place where, like we said, only one more college football game left. We're ticking down to the end. I mean, we've got basically a month left of the NFL, including the playoffs here. And it kind of got my head spinning a little bit about what time on the sports calendar bums you out the most. Because it's really easy to say, I know you're a big baseball fan, so you probably wouldn't say this, but it's kind of really easy to say, like late July, early August, where there's just not that much going on. You have baseball, but that's about it. You're still another month and a half away from football starting. And there's not much going on, right? But I actually sort of start getting excited around that time because football's on the horizon. We're about to be like 8 months away from football happening again. And that really bums me out. And we don't even have what used to kind of get me through some of that time period was back when there was no early signing period. So January, February would get really exciting because you had all of the recruiting stuff happening like we had last month. Like imagine the Dylan Raiola stuff happening right after the national championship game kind of sustained you over for another month or so. We don't have that anymore. So we'll get the NFL through February. Then you've got March Madness. So I'm good there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I think for me, it's as soon as March Madness is over, I get to be a little bummed out because I like baseball. I'm not as into baseball as I used to be. Opening day used to be one of my favorite days of the year. But as soon as the Final Four is over, I start to get a little bit of my sports Sunday Scaries.
And that happens. For me in general, I'd probably say football season is when that's over, it's the saddest time on the sports calendar because one, I'm a fantasy football player, so which is over now. Fantasy is over, but I kind of like to bridge my addiction to fantasy football. I play fantasy baseball, and that's just too much of an investment, too much of a commitment,
so much time.
It's very time consuming. Although I play it more now because it keeps me up to date with the current players in Major League Baseball. But it's just, it's rough sometimes. But the reason I say the end of football in general and not March Madness, because, and I love college basketball. I love the tournament. Like that's probably my favorite time of year, to be quite honest. But I'm so antsy for the draft, like the NFL draft in April.
Yeah.
And when your team has a top pick on top of it, like it really helps to have like, okay, March Madness is over. Now I have the draft to look forward to in what, 4 weeks?
Yeah.
And so once that hits, then it's like, okay, the time is still very exciting. So right now, even though football season is coming to a close in February, I still have the draft to look forward to. So football season's not technically over for me yet.
Yeah.
And then you have the spring game up here in Nebraska, and you'll get to see Dylan Raiola. So, like, that's another reason to kind of stay excited for football through April. But I would actually probably pinpoint for me, just in general, like when my teams are in the playoffs.
Yeah.
And I'll go with the Cardinals and Blues for the sake of the example, because that's the hometown teams. When they get eliminated from the playoffs, that is like when I get the most sad.
Yeah.
Because the season is still going.
But without you.
But without me.
It's like the FOMO.
I remember being up here in Omaha a couple of years ago. Maybe it was 3 now. The Cardinals were playing the Dodgers, and Chris Taylor hit a walk-off home run in the 10th. The Cardinals did not deserve to win that game at all. They looked horrible. But they went all the way down to the wire with a Dodgers team that was 10 times better than they were, and I had to watch their season come to an end. And I remember just sitting in my apartment, just like, like, you know, when you're like, it's kind of like that guy that was walking on the sidewalk yesterday. He had his like hood up. He was kind of like slouched over, and he was walking slow. Like, you know, when you're like kicking like rocks on the ground,
standing behind a bush for a suspicious.
What is it from Arrested Development? It's like young Michael when he has like his head down and he's like walking on like the dirt of like where they're building houses. Like, that's kind of how I feel when my team's eliminated from the playoffs. That's the worst time of year because it's just over. Right? You had all that excitement, added excitement because you were playing for something, and then boom, season over. If they were to win, like when the Blues won the Stanley Cup in 19, oh my gosh, it's incredible. Like, you're riding that high until next season, which happens to be in like 2 months because after the hockey season's over, like 2 months later, you're playing again. But like, those are like the greatest moments. But when your team just gets booted, knocked out, like when Nebraska wasn't able to make a bowl game this
when
season.
They lost to Iowa, that Saturday was a bummer.
Like, think about just like how down, like you were just hanging your head. Like, yes, you probably were like the negative Nancy's, who I told you not to be yesterday. You have to be optimistic Oscars. The negative Nancy's were like, oh, I saw it coming.
Yeah.
This is exactly what Nebraska football is. Yeah. Like, that's probably how you reacted in the moment, but you're down because you were so close. You were 5-3 for the longest time, and then boom, you were hit with the 5-7 record.
Yeah, that's a good point. So I think I was a little early on mine. I think it's probably May, because you're right. I love the draft. I love the combine. I love the spring game. So all that's in April. The combine might be the combine's before that's in like February or late February, early March. But so yeah, I can get through April. May is when it starts to get a little dicey. There's not a ton going on in May. Usually by that point, I've realized the Red Sox aren't going to be very good again this year. So May is a little bit rough. June, we get to the College World Series, which I enjoy. So you kind of start picking up momentum there. May's kind of a dead period for me.
Yeah, you know what else sucks?
What's
the
that?
All-Star break.
Yeah.
That is horrible for sports.
Really nothing.
There is nothing going on during the All-Star break. Absolutely nothing. I remember having to check the ESPN app and looking for soccer games to watch because you go to the MLB schedule and it's like, hey, like their last game, let's just say it's Saturday or Sunday, whatever. And then they play the All-Star game on what, like Tuesday or Wednesday?
Tuesday, I think.
And then boom, they don't play again until Friday. And so those 2 games or those 2 days off are the longest 2 days of my sports life. Yeah. The longest.
You got to get out there.
Those are some sad times, man.
You got to get out there, maybe spend some time with your dog, with your family.
Yep. I need to get down to like my family's lake house. Brad, yeah. Hit Brad's point here.
Brad says arena football coming back this year starting in May. That'll help me get through the summer.
So I brought that up yesterday.
Yeah, we talked about this yesterday. I actually really enjoy arena football. I think it's a fun kind of distraction. I think it's different enough from your typical, because here's part of the problem.
Unless you're Kurt Warner, not me.
We had this discussion a little bit yesterday, really briefly, about a spring football league and if it worked or not. And we both just said no. And I think it's because it's too similar to the NFL, but it's just not as good.
Yeah, and it's the not as good part.
But arena's not as good, but it's different enough that it feels like I'm watching something else.
But I'd rather watch the XFL than arena football.
Really?
Yeah, and I like the XFL too because they do it differently. Like, as much as it's similar, the way that it's broadcasted is so much different than the NFL. I love how microphones are just in the players' faces all the time, and you get their passionate reactions and not the coach speak reaction. Those moments, like, those are can't miss moments.
See, I kind of like arena football because it's different enough from the NFL that I don't feel like I'm just watching a watered down version of the same thing. It feels like I'm watching a different sport to me. And so it kind of, I enjoy probably the arena league and, the Omaha Beef and stuff like that a little bit more than I would say the XFL, USFL. But I do love Dwayne The Rock Johnson. So maybe we'll give it a try.
Hey, I'm going to get you some Battlehawks gear.
All right, let's do it.
And I'm going to adopt you into our fan base.